The moment my son told his wife, "Honey, take Mom's card, there's $130,000 on it," I felt a 20-year-old secret crawl back from the grave. I'm 60 now, old enough to laugh at my own mistakes, but some scars still sting when touched. That card, that innocent-looking blue piece of plastic, was the one thing in my life that was never meant to be found. Not by my son, not by my daughter-in-law, and absolutely not by anyone who ever claimed to love me. My son, Daniel, said it with the kind of easy confidence only a child raised in stability can have. He had no idea what it took for me to give him that childhood. No clue what it cost me. No clue what I survived. But his wife, Emily Sweet, polished, always chasing the next luxury item, reached for that card like it was a golden ticket. Her diamond bracelet flashed as she grabbed it, and for a moment I saw another hand. A larger one, a man's hand. My ex-husband's, grabbing, taking, controlling. My heart lurched. Not because of the money, but because of the emphasis, history attached to it. I spent 20 years hiding that account. It began as a survival stash, small deposits I made when my ex-husband wasn't looking. I'd slip $20 from grocery money into my shoe or hide tips from my night shifts in the lining of my purse. Eventually, when I was brave enough, I opened a private account under my maiden name. Only God and the bank's computer system knew it existed. That account saved me when my marriage finally exploded, saved me from sleeping in the shelter, saved me from returning to a man who broke more plates than promises, saved me from becoming a broken version of myself. And now, here was Emily, twirling the card between her fingers like a toy. I reached out and took it from her slowly, deliberately. "Emily," I said, my voice steady but low, "that card isn't for shopping." She blinked, confused. Daniel frowned, and I knew this was the moment my past would no longer stay buried. It was time to tell a story I had hoped my children would never need to hear. I didn't start saving money to build a future. I saved because I wasn't sure I'd survive long enough to have one. Daniel and Emily stared at me, confusion mixed with curiosity, and I realized something. They had only ever known the woman I became, not the woman I had to escape from. I sat down slowly, letting the weight of memory settle over me like dust in an abandoned room. "Let me tell you," I began, "why that card exists, and why I can't let anyone treat it lightly. I was 24 when I married Michael Young, hopeful and stupid in all the ways only love can make you stupid. He was charming then, deadly charming. The kind of man who made you feel like the sun rose because he approved of it. But after our wedding, the clouds gathered faster than I could understand them. The first time he raised his voice at me, he apologized with roses. The first time he punched a hole in the wall, he brought me jewelry. And the first time he grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. He brought home a diamond necklace and whispered, 'Don't make me angry again.' Something inside me cracked that night. Not my bone, my belief that love could fix anything. For years I hid the bruises with makeup, excuses, long sleeves and practiced smiles. I worked night shifts at a diner and early mornings at a daycare so I could stay out of the house as much as possible. People saw me smiling and thought, "She's strong." No, I was surviving. One night, after a particularly violent argument about a phone bill that was $12 higher than usual, I sat on the kitchen floor and cried until my ribs hurt. Then I did something small, insignificant to anyone but me. I opened my purse, took out a folded $20 bill Michael had forgotten to take from my paycheck, and hid it under the carpet beneath the stove. It was the first brick in a wall I would someday use to escape. Every day after that I saved something. $1, $2. A $5 slipped into my bra when Michael wasn't looking. Eventually I opened a secret bank account, just a simple savings account under my maiden name, something he'd never think to check. Daniel didn't know any of this. He was a child then, all big eyes and Lego blocks, trying to understand why Mummy sometimes moved slowly, why Mummy always said, "I'm fine," even when I wasn't. "Mom," Daniel whispered now, "I had no idea." Of course he didn't. I worked so hard to make sure he didn't. That account, the one with $130,000, now began with one wrinkled $20 bill hidden under a stove. It wasn't money. It was hope. My first real hope. The night Michael shattered the coffee table, I realized hope wasn't enough. I needed an escape plan. It happened on a Thursday. I remember because I'd worked a double shift, my feet swollen, my hair smelling like fryer oil. I walked into our living room and found Michael sitting in the dark, a beer bottle dangling from his fingers like a threat. One look at him and my stomach tightened. I knew that look. The storm before the storm look. Daniel, only 6 at the time, peeked from behind the hallway door. I gently signalled him to stay quiet. That was our unspoken language, me shielding him pretending not to understand why. Michael exploded over nothing. A misplaced bill, a cold dinner, a toy on the floor. I never knew which fuse would burn first. He flipped the coffee table so hard the glass shattered across the floor. The sound was like a gunshot. Daniel whimpered. And something inside me, something small but fierce, snapped into place. Not fear, not anger, a decision. That night, after Michael passed out, I cleaned the broken glass while Daniel slept into my lap. I held him close, listening to his soft breaths, and whispered a promise into his hair. I won't raise my son in fear. I realized I needed more than hidden 20s. I needed a real plan. A way out? A future end. So I called the bank from a payphone outside a laundromat and switched the secret account to a high-interest savings plan. The banker asked if I wanted to list a beneficiary. I hesitated, then whispered, Daniel, just Daniel. My hands trembled because for the first time I wasn't just surviving. I was preparing. Every cash tip, every extra dollar from babysitting, every scraped-together paycheck, I deposited it. I learned how to budget like my life depended on it, because it did. Over the years, the account grew slowly, like a plant watered with fear and determination. And while Michael's rage grew louder, my silence grew stronger. I stopped arguing back. I stopped cowering. I stopped reacting. He thought he was breaking me, but he was unknowingly building my escape. The night Daniel went to college, his scholarship acceptance shining like salvation, I packed a suitcase, left a note, and walked away from Michael forever. The account saved me. It bought my freedom. It bought my first apartment, my therapy, my peace. And now, decades later, that same account sat in my purse, in the form of a card my son had accidentally handed to his wife. A card carrying 20 years of pain and 20 years of survival. I thought I'd left my past behind, until the night my ex-husband found my number. After I left Michael, I thought the worst was over. I rented a tiny one-bedroom apartment with peeling wallpaper and noisy neighbours, but to me, it felt like a palace. It was the first place where every bruise could finally fade, where every breath didn't feel like a negotiation. I found a job at a community centre, helping women who had walked the same bruised road I once walked. It gave me purpose. It gave me the strength I didn't know I still had. Daniel visited during holidays, calling me from his dorm with stories about classes, football games, new friends. I let him believe everything was fine because that was the least I could give him after all he had unknowingly lived through. Then one night, 10 years after the divorce, I got a call. A number I didn't recognize. A silence before the breathing. And then his voice. Michael. His tone was colder than I remembered, like time had sharpened him instead of dulling him. Enjoying the life you stole from me? He said. I felt my throat tighten. It was the voice I'd spent half my life running from. I don't want trouble, I whispered, but he laughed, a slow, sickening sound. You always were trouble, and you owe me. That word, owe, hit me like a fist. He continued, the money you hid, the money you stole, it's not yours. My heart stopped. He knew. Somehow, he had learned about the account. I ended the call and locked every door, every window. For weeks I slept with the hall light on, listening to every creak of the building. I told no one, not Daniel, not my co-workers, not the women I counselled. Trauma teaches you to stay silent even when you're free. I moved apartments, changed jobs, even altered the account number and added new security layers. But Michael's voice stayed with me, an echo in the corners of every new room. Years passed. Slowly the fear thinned. I built a life again, small, quiet, safe. Daniel married, settled down, and believed his mother was a survivor with a healed heart. But trauma does not disappear. It just waits. And the moment I saw Emily holding that card, that moment Daniel said, "Mum, let her treat herself." I felt that old phone call ring inside my chest again. The past was not gone. It had simply been sleeping. The moment Emily asked, "How did you save so much money?" I realised she wasn't curious. She was digging. After I took the card from her hand, the room fell into an uncomfortable silence. Daniel tried to laugh it off, but Emily, she watched me with a look I recognised instantly. It was the same look I used to see in Michael's eyes. Not violence. Suspicion. She folded her arms, her designer purse clutched tight against her hip. "Mom," she said sweetly, too sweetly, "I'm just surprised. I mean, you never talk about money. And suddenly you have over 100,000 saved?" Her tone was polite. Her eyes were not. I smiled the way women my age learn to smile when men or anyone else tries to interrogate their lives. Calm, controlled, practiced. "I've lived a long life, Emily," I said quietly, "and sometimes a woman has to save herself before she can save anything else." She tilted her head. "But Daniel said you never had a big job. No inheritance, no big investments. So, where did it come from?" Daniel looked embarrassed. "Emily, let it go." But she didn't. She leaned closer, whispering like she was offering me a kindness. "If this money is from something illegal or dangerous, you should tell us." Illegal. Dangerous. The words sliced through me because they were the exact accusations Michael had thrown at me during that haunting phone call. My pulse started pounding. My palms grew cold. Trauma has a way of reviving itself without asking permission. I stood up slowly, steadying my breath. "Emily," I said, "I don't owe anyone an explanation about my survival." She blinked, then smiled. A thin smile, the kind women use when they lose an argument but plan to win the war. "Oh, of course," she said lightly. "I'm just thinking of the family." But I wasn't fooled. I knew that tone. She wanted access to that account. Not because she needed it, but because she wanted to understand it and maybe control it. Daniel escorted her out to the car while I stood alone in the doorway, clutching the card in my hand. My heart beat too fast. My breath shook. The hallway lights flickered from a timer, but to me they felt like ghosts of memories I thought I'd buried. For the first time in years I felt watched. Not by Michael, but by the life I built and the people who didn't know the price I paid for it. I closed the door and whispered to myself, "It's starting again." 3 days later, Emily showed up at my door unannounced, and that's when I realised she wasn't done with the card. It was a quiet Sunday morning. I was making tea, letting the steam warm my hands, when I heard a knock at the door. Not the gentle kind. Sharp, quick, purposeful. I froze. For a second, I felt 20 years younger, standing in my old kitchen, listening for Michael's footsteps. Trauma doesn't age. It just hides. When I opened the door, Emily stood there, perfectly dressed as always, her smile polite but strained. "That was fast," I said quietly. She brushed past me without waiting for an invitation. That told me everything. "Mom," she began, "I think we should talk, woman to woman." Her voice carried the tone of someone who believed she deserved answers. She sat on my couch, legs crossed, nails immaculate, eyes scanning my small living room like she was evaluating it. I sat opposite her, the card still in my robe pocket. "Listen," she said softly, "I didn't mean to upset you, but I talked to Daniel and we think it's best if you explain what's going on, so we can help you manage things. Financially." Financially. Help. Manage. Those words sent a chill down my spine. That was exactly how Michael started controlling me, in the beginning pretending concern, disguising domination as help. I took a slow breath. "What exactly do you want to manage, Emily?" She hesitated, then said it plainly. The account, the money. It should be in a family structure, maybe shared, maybe under a trust. I stared at her. She had no idea what she was asking. No idea what that money represented, what it cost me, what it saved me from. I leaned back and spoke softly, but each word was sharp as glass. Emily, that account is not a family fund. It is not an inheritance. It is not for weddings, houses, or hobbies. She tilted her chin. Then what is it? I closed my eyes for a moment. I could feel my pulse in my throat. It is the reason I'm alive, I finally whispered. Emily's face lost its confidence for the first time. What do you mean? I opened my eyes and looked straight at her. That money was born from fear, from bruises, from nights I hid in closets with my son because my husband was breaking things in the other room. Emily swallowed hard, unsure what to say. I continued. That account saved us when no one else could, and I will never ever let anyone else touch it, not Daniel, not you, not the past I escaped. She sat in silence, her perfect posture finally collapsing into something human. She whispered, I didn't know. Of course she didn't. How could she? People only see the woman you become, never the wars you fought to get there. She left shortly after, quiet and pale. For the first time I felt a shift, like the truth had finally stepped into the room after hiding for decades. But peace didn't follow. Because that night someone else made contact. Someone I had hoped was gone forever. My phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. I'll never forget the night my world finally cracked, so quietly that no one but me heard the breaking. I was standing in my small kitchen, the hum of the old refrigerator filling the silence. It was past midnight, and I was sipping cold chamomile tea because sleep had been refusing to come for weeks. My hands trembled even when I held something as light as a cup. Stress does that. You don't feel it arriving, but it settles into your bones like winter frost. My son's words kept echoing in my mind. Honey, take Mum's card. There's $130,000 on it. Treat yourself. He had said it so casually, not knowing that the money wasn't a blessing. It was a burden I had carried for decades, a secret I had hidden even from him. I walked to my bedroom and opened the metal box I kept under my bed. Inside were old medical bills, letters from collectors, and a faded court document I had prayed never to show anyone. The $130,000 wasn't savings. It was debt. Debt I had taken to protect my son when he was young. Debt that had followed me like a shadow with claws. As I turned the brittle papers, a gust of fear washed over me. My son had finally grown, built a life, found love, and started to dream big, yet he had no idea how much I had sacrificed to make sure he could. I had spent years working double shifts, pretending everything was fine, smiling, even when my legs burned from exhaustion. And now? The lie had grown too big to carry. I sat down on the floor and finally allowed myself to cry, not from sadness, but from a strange mix of relief and terror. For 60 years I had lived for everyone but myself. I had been the provider, the protector, the one who always held things together. But that night I felt the weight shift. Something inside me whispered, "It's time." Sunlight spilled across the kitchen table, right where I had laid the stack of documents the night before. The papers looked smaller in daylight, almost harmless, but I knew they carried the weight of 30 years of struggle. I ran my fingers over them, feeling the texture of old ink, unpaid bills, sacrifice turned into paper. My son arrived around 10, cheerful as always. "Mom, I brought breakfast," he said as he set a warm bag of bagels on the counter. His voice was light. Mine felt like stone. "Sit down, sweetheart. There's something we need to talk about." He froze. That sentence. A parent only uses it when something is truly serious. He sat across from me, worry creeping into his eyes. I pushed the documents toward him. At first, he didn't understand. He lifted the papers, scanning them with confused frowns. "Mum, these dates, this is from when I was a kid." "Yes." "And these amounts, this is debt, big debt." "Yes." His face paled. "But you told me you were fine. You always said everything was fine." I felt tears filling my eyes, but my voice stayed steady. "Speak." "I wasn't fine, not for a very long time." I told him everything. How I had taken emergency loans to cover his surgeries, his school supplies, the rent after his father walked out. How interest grew faster than I could pay it. How I hid the truth so he wouldn't feel guilty or limited. He covered his mouth with his hand. "Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because you were a child, then a teenager, then a young man trying to build his own life. I didn't want the darkness of my struggle to dim your light." Silence filled the room. A heavy silence, but not angry, shocked, hurt, and, slowly, understanding. Then he reached across the table and squeezed my hands. "Mom, I would have helped. I still will. We'll fix this together." His voice broke on the word, together, and that's when my tears finally slipped free. In that moment, I realized something powerful. I had spent my whole life protecting him, but I had never allowed him the honor of protecting me back. For the first time, I wasn't alone. Trust, once broken, is like shattered glass. Every step forward risks a cut, but that morning I decided to start walking again. After confessing the truth, the air between Daniel and me felt heavy but alive. For decades I had carried my secrets like weights in a backpack that I never let him see. And now each paper on the table represented a small fracture being mended. I began explaining how I had managed the account, every deposit, every hidden dollar. I told him about my fears, my sacrifices, the nights I stayed awake crying, working extra shifts just to ensure he could have opportunities I never had. "Mom, I had no idea," he said, voice soft. "Yes, honey," I whispered. "I wanted to protect you from the burdens I carried alone." He looked at me differently after that. Not with pity, not with judgment, but with understanding. The first real understanding in his adult life. And then slowly he asked, "Mom, can we use the account wisely? Can we honor what you built without risking it?" I nodded. "Yes, but only under strict rules. This money isn't for frivolous purchases. It's for emergencies, growth, and security. It's a lifeline, not a toy." We made a plan. Every withdrawal must be approved by both of us. Every investment carefully researched. We even discussed setting up a trust so that if something happened to me, the account would remain protected. It was empowering. Finally sharing the burden I had carried alone for so long. Later I called Emily. I explained gently why the card could not be used, why the money was off limits. She listened quietly, a little embarrassed, a little humbled. And in that conversation I saw the first flicker of respect, the kind that comes from understanding the weight of someone else's life experiences. That night I slept better than I had in years. Not because the world was perfect, but because I had rebuilt a bridge with the person I loved most. Sometimes survival is about running, but sometimes survival is about sharing the story of the wounds you endured, so others know the strength it took to endure them. I finally felt the heavy weight of decades begin to lift. I never imagined that a simple card could represent both my past fears and my hard-won freedom. The morning after our long conversation, the air felt lighter in my apartment. Daniel had left for work, Emily had promised to respect boundaries, and I finally had a quiet moment to reflect. For 60 years I had carried burdens, fear, secrecy, exhaustion, and pain. And now, for the first time, I could breathe without the weight pressing down. "Tea?" I walked to the window and looked out at the city. Cars moved like tiny ants, and people hurried to their own lives, unaware of the battles being fought behind closed doors. I smiled softly, thinking, I am free. Speak. The card I once feared handing over was now safe, respected, and understood. I remembered my mother's words when I was a child. Strength isn't in never falling, but in rising each time you do. I had fallen many times, emotionally, financially, and physically. But each fall taught me resilience, patience, and strategy. My secret account had been more than money. It had been a lifeline, a teacher, and a symbol of my strength. Daniel called in the afternoon. "Mom," he said, voice filled with warmth, "I want to take care of you the way you took care of me all those years." Tears pricked my eyes, but they were tears of joy. I realized then that surviving and protecting your loved ones doesn't just mean running from danger. It also means teaching them the value of courage, honesty, and trust. Speak. And I had taught him well. Later I placed the card back in my purse, this time with a smile. Not fear, not anxiety, confidence. The money, the memories, the battles. They were mine, yes, but shared now with those who deserved to understand their meaning. That evening I sat in my chair sipping tea, listening to the city hum around me. For the first time in decades I felt peace, not fleeting, not fragile, but solid, earned and lasting. Freedom isn't about leaving the past behind. It's about facing it, sharing it, and knowing you survived. And now, I finally had that freedom,